Kimberly from Fat Quarter Shop, and we're on week 3 of our 4-part mystery sew-along called Boo Crew. This week we're going to be stitching a kitty cat and a cauldron. The fabric featured is Too Cute to Spook by Me and My Sister Designs and Bella Solids from Moda Fabrics. I'm going to be using Aurifil 2600 thread to piece it. We also have a matching Boo Crew cross stitch so you can stitch along with us for even more spooky sewing. Let's get started. So we're going to start week 3 and we're going to make a little kitty cat and a cauldron. And like we did in the previous weeks, what I like to do is do one section at a time. So the first part of the instructions are for the cauldron. So we're going to start there and we're going to work on all of our corner squares. And we're going to, on step 2, take a little cheat and use half square triangle paper. And that's how I'm going to show you how to assemble this block. And we do have a note that you would use 1.5 inch finished triangles on a roll. So everything is cut and ready except for the paper. So on the paper, what I need to cut is 4 squares. So for my half square triangles, I am going to cut 4 squares and I'm just going to cut a rectangle out. And my fabric that I'm going to cut, instead of following the instructions, I'm just going to cut my fabric a tiny bit wider so that the paper will fit nicely. So what I'm going to do is open my pattern and just go in the order of the pattern like we've been doing. So we're going to take a fabric L rectangle. We're going to add fabric H to each side, and we've already drawn a line with our friction pen like we did in the previous weeks. And you just want to pay attention to where the drawn lines are. And we're going to be using our seam align glue. And the other end, and you can just follow our pattern. You can either read the instructions or follow the pictures. I'm just following the pictures. I'll move this up here. And then for N and R, we cut our piece just a little bit bigger. So we're going to put these 2 fabrics right sides together, and we do have a half square triangle guide on our website, so if you ever need that, that's free on fatquartershop.com. And right here, we're not going to use glue. What you're going to do is just put them right sides together and pin a couple of times. Just pin away from the sewing lines, and you will sew on the dotted lines with a shorter stitch length. And then we're going to skip these because this requires a 1/4 inch foot, but we're going to go here and kind of start this one. So we're going to make 1 fabric M, take a fabric J, and we're going to do as many as we can at one time. So the J can go here, and the H can go here. And I'm just paying attention to the lines on here. And then I'm going to make 1 more like that, except different corners. So take the last fabric M, and I'm just paying attention to the drawn lines, just putting it just like the pattern shows. And on the J, you can do either corner, it doesn't matter. And then from here, what I'm going to do is lower my stitch length and stitch on the dotted lines. I'm going to lower the stitch length to like a 1.2, and then when I sew on here, I'm going to have a 1.5 stitch length, which is my normal length. And we're going to sew on all the lines all at one time and just stitch directly on the dotted line. So I've sewn on the dotted lines. I'm going to set this aside, increase my stitch length to a 1.5, and then just sew on these lines. from here, you want to trim on the solid lines. So the first thing I do is I do the outside lines. And just like stitching directly on those dotted lines accurately, cutting accurately is going to give you the best results. And then I will do the solid lines in between. And then cut on the line on the diagonal. The diagonal line does not have to be cut perfectly because that is in your seam allowance. And then I will show you how to pull the paper off in 1 second. And using half square triangles is just going to save time. We did write the instructions the traditional way if you would like to do that as well. So from here, we're trimming 1/4 inch away. And just cut your bigger piece first and then fold it back to cut your smaller piece. So you can just pull the paper off if you have stitch with a short enough stitch length. You could fold it back and then pull. It's totally up to you. And then we'll go to the iron and we're going to press according to the arrows in our instructions. So what you can do is put the piece that you sewed on the section that you sewed, and then that will help you know which one you need to iron. So this one we're going to press towards the orange, and I'm going to set my seam by just putting my iron on my piece and then pressing. And you can use a clapper if you would like to get your seams nice and flat. And this one, because I've got 2 seams over here that need to be flat, just put the clapper on that end. The half square triangles you're going to press towards the orange, so just set your seam. And on these I'm going to kind of stack them and press so that the bottoms get flatter and flatter. This one you're going to press the large square to the purple, and then your small square to the orange. And this one we're gonna press the large square to the purple, and then the small square to the orange. So from here, before I go on, I'm going to cut the little dog ears off the end of the half square triangles. Just use sharp scissors and just trim the little sections off. And then what we're going to do is go back in the pattern, add any more corner squares we can, and then start lining up things we can sew with a 1/4 inch foot and kind of do them at the same time. So we have this step done. These are done, but now we need to make 4 of these. So what I will do is we're going to line them up, and our whites are going to go in the center, and then I need O's for the outside, and then 4 here. So we can sew these with a 1/4 inch seam. We can't do anything here or here or here yet, but we can add the remaining J's to these. So we'll just put it on this other corner. So what I'm going to do while I have my open toe foot, I'm going to go ahead and finish the 2 corner squares. Set those aside, and then I'll move this closer, and I'm going to sew this together, and then I'm just going to keep repeating, but I'm going to change to my 1/4 inch foot. what I'll do first is trim a 1/4 inch away here. Set this aside to iron. And these, they're in units of 2, so I'm going to cut them apart. So here's 1 unit, 2nd unit, 3rd unit, 4th unit, and we're going to iron. So this piece we're going to press towards the purple. It's right there. Just set your seam and press. And this one presses towards the purple. And then these all press toward the orange. So what I'll do is set the seam, usually count to 5, press to the orange, flip it over, press the other side to the orange. And do that on all 4. So from here, what we need to do is we need to sew these together. And to do that, what we're going to do is just put your fabric, since their seams are going to nest, you can just pull it from the left to the right and it will nest right there because you've pressed opposite directions. And I'm going to pin there and at the end and at the beginning, and we're going to sew with a 1/4 inch seam all 4 of these. And actually, when I'm looking at this, the center of this star right here, we could sew the T, the Q, and the T together. So we can actually sew these together so that that is done. So you can see what I'm trying to do is do as many steps as I can at the same time to be efficient. And when I remove my pins, I remove them right before I get to the stitch. And I sewed this part. I just need to add the rectangle to the other side. So from here, set your seams, and this one you can press any direction. It really doesn't matter. They're actually, if you turn them upside down, they go the same direction. And then the other one we're going to press towards the white. And I love working with patterns that have pressing arrows so I don't have to think. Now because these go to the white, what I'm going to do is just finger press it down, press it, and then we'll keep building the star. So for the star, you just want to pay attention to the direction of the little star points. And so I'm going to place them down and then I'll check them. So what I've done is I have a square here and then it should do a big circle. So white, 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 white. So that looks correct. What I can do is pin these 2 together. And then we can start building the bottom of the cauldron also. So this is the bottom of the cauldron. So we've got F in the center and then an I on each side. And then I just make sure my cauldron legs are going this way. And what I can go ahead and do is pin, and I'll actually pin the rectangle onto, and just remember that I have 2 sides to sew. And I can add this one. And then we're going to just sew with a 1/4 inch seam all 4 of these. I'm just going to go ahead and pin these together. These other 2, I'm going to use my seam press roller to get them flat so I don't have to go all the way to the iron. And then we'll add these 2. And you want to make sure that you don't chop off your point right here, that it looks really nice. And luckily it does. And then we'll pin this I'll do these last 3 seams, and then we'll start building the cauldron. And this block is not hard at all. It just has a lot of pieces, so just take it step by step. And then this one, I'm also going to press with a seam roller. We'll add the center, and then we'll get everything pressed and start adding to the sides. And what you want is you want your squares on the inside, and remember you want that circle on the outside. Put these together, pin, and your seams will nest right here. So I always pin anytime there's an intersection. And I want to make sure I didn't chop off those points and that this matches, and it does. So I'll just press this slightly and then put this here. You just want to make sure you don't do something like this, because then it will look really funny. And I think sometimes when you're sewing really fast, that can happen. So I think the star is probably the most detailed part of this block, and everything else will be a breeze. So from here, I'm going to set the seam, press towards the inside. It's kind of like a little sashing inside the star, and just get it nice and flat. And then I will go and look at the pressing on this bottom, and we're going to press towards the squares and the rectangles. So just set this seam, press, set this seam, press. Okay, so here's our star, and we're gonna add rectangles to all 4 sides and then add corner squares. But I'm looking at my block and it's not very even, so I'm gonna just even it out by just trimming all 4 sides before I keep going. This is optional. Just kind of gets those threads off, makes it a little bit more square. And then let's see, we're gonna add K's to the left and the right, and we're gonna add P's to the top and the bottom. So what I will do here is pin these, stitch with a 1/4 inch seam, use my seam press roller, and then add the top and bottoms, and then we'll add our corner squares, and our cauldron will almost be done because we've already done the top and the bottom. We're just now working on the middle. So from here, you can either iron or use the roller, and it will get nice and perfectly flat once we add the next 2 and iron. And it actually doesn't matter, upside down, they're all the same, either way. So from here, we're gonna add fabric H squares to each corner of the block. And this time I'm just going to pin, since there's 4 big corners, the glue might start moving around. So, and we're gonna switch back to an open toe foot and stitch directly on the line. trim a 1/4 inch away from those drawn lines and press toward the purple. So now you can put your top, your bottom, and your middle, and we're going to put these together, and you're going to see that following our pressing instructions, your seams will nest since we pressed them opposite ways. So pin right there. I always pin at any intersection there is. And we can pin the top and the bottom, and the same thing is going to happen at the bottom. Everything's going to nest. Okay, so from here, you can press any way you want. On this one, it doesn't matter which way you press. We do recommend pressing open. So when I press open, I press to one side first. So you can leave it there, or you can press open. So to press open, I let the seam not be hot anymore and then press. And now we can move to make our cat. So to build your cat, I'm going to do the same thing where I do all of my corner squares at one time. So I'm going to take a fabric D rectangle. We're going to make one, add the W using the same direction of the lines, and I'm going to use my seam align glue. And we'll come back and add the second W later. We can't do this one yet because that builds upon the previous. This one we're going to make one, and we're going to take the AA rectangle and we're going to add a fabric J to only one corner, and we're only making one of these. And then we're going to make two that look like this, so we're going to pull two Z's and we're going to add J's on the top left, bottom right. So I'll just put these on here, and you can see the glue saves time. And by the time I add all of these, the glue will be drying, and so it will be less likely to shift. Then we're going to make two with Y's with H on the bottom right. And I'm going to do the same thing, put the glue, and then just look at the direction of the line. We're going to make three of these, so we're going to take X and we're going to put H's on the top left, so just three. And just pay attention to the direction of the drawn line. And this one you can actually do both at the same time if you want. So you could put the others on this corner, and we'll just flip the fabric so we don't sew over the top layer, and then these go this way. And what we'll do is we'll sew, I'll show you, but we'll sew this one and then we'll flip the fabric. And then we're going to take one fabric V and add the last J to the top left. So what I'll do now is just lay them here, but we're going to do all of these lines at one time. So we're going to put our open toe foot and just stitch directly on the line. Now this one we have two lines, so I'm going to stitch one and then I'll stitch the other side. So the ones I held for the last are the ones that have the fabrics on both sides. So what I'll do is put this in, start stitching. When I get to this end, I'm going to just fold this up and stitch. Turn it around, and I'm going to have to do the same thing on the other side. I'm going to cut a 1/4 inch away and put the piece where it goes on the paper so that I know which way to press when I get there. This one right here needs one more square added, so we're going to do that real quick because the others don't need any squares added. And then what I'll do is as I iron, I'll pull them off and look at the arrows on how I should press. So like I said, I'll just pull this off, pay attention to the arrow, and I will press all of these at one time. So the only quarter squares I have left to do are on this piece right here. And this is 3 by 5.5, and we're going to add fabric S's to the corners, the black corners. We'll do those real quick and then press these, and then we'll be ready to build our block. And then we'll start looking at all the instructions that use a 1/4 inch seam. So we're going to have 5 C's, we're going to have 3 CC's and 2 U's. So we'll lay those out and I'll pin them in a second. On top of that is going to be the BB, which is going to be this. And on the bottom is going to be this piece. And then from here, we're going to put all these pieces where they go on the pattern so we don't get them mixed up. So those go there, these go here, and these go here. So these two are going to look like this. So we'll pin those together. These 3, we're going to add a G to the other side to 2 of them. And one of them we're going to do different. So one of them is going to have 2 eyes. And that's what's great about our patterns is you don't even have to read, you can just look. And then these 2 are going to have G's that go on this side. And then I think that's enough pinning. So we will kind of mass produce at the same time, just pin all of these together. Sew them with a 1/4 inch seam, then we'll come back and press. So this one I need to add the other side, and then these I'm going to keep joining so that the eyes are all put together. Then we're going to do the same thing where we put all of our pieces where they go. So now we'll just keep building. So from here, we've got our BB, our eyes, bottom of our face, and then we'll start building here. So those can go here, and we'll get a fabric C. This is gonna go under C. Then this will go under that, so we've got to piece that first. And then X and I could have sewn that, but I missed that, so I'll sew these together. And then this, we can build this. So we've got the bigger squares on the outside, and all of my black goes this way, so we can sew these two together. So we'll keep building. Now here you are going to want these two to line up at 1/4 inch. So what I'm going to do is mark 1/4 inch away. Put these together, pin at the end, and then pin where the two lines meet up. So that is my little cat. So I'm going to sew these together, and then the bottom part, and then we'll press all our units, and then we'll just have a little bit more to assemble. And you also want these to line up, so we'll mark here also. So I'm just going to follow the arrows for pressing, and I am going to set my seam as I go. So this is the left cat, so that's already done, so we'll move this over here out of the way. We're going to add a fabric B rectangle to his tail. His tail's going to go down. We're going to add fabric A over here, and it looks correct. It looks like his little legs and his tail, so we will sew these together. And then after we're done with that, we will just add a little fabric E sashing between the cat and the cauldron. So we'll do that same trick where we mark a 1/4 inch on each side and then pin right there. So I'm gonna first sew this together, and then I'll sew the cat body together, then we'll iron, and then we'll add the cauldron. And this block has a lot of pieces, but if you just take it in chunks, it's going to come together beautifully. Thanks for joining me for week 3 of our Boo Crew Mystery Quilt Along. Join me next week where we put all our blocks together. See you then.